The human body is definitely something of miraculous coincidences. I find it how fascinating how the same stuff, you admit when you're getting a hard day's work is the same stuff when you're, emotionally at, you know, at different peaks, right? So a common piece of advice that I get is that, you can either shed tears or you can shed sweat. That's up to you to decide. And, um, some of you may ask me, like, Arian, how does that have to do with politics? But, I also heard a quote from Naval Ravikant, who is a American entrepreneur and thinker and influencer. He's a very pro-capitalist mindset, and he says, you know, socialism comes from the heart, but capitalism comes from the head. And, you know, I don't know, I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but I think he's very pro-capitalist, obviously. Um, the way he said it was almost as if, your head is something of great value compared to your heart. Like your heart can be wrong, and your head is always logical, always right. Um, but I don't think that's just the case. And especially when you see this election, I live on a college campus, and every single waking second of my life, there's always telling me to vote. There's always voter campaigns. There's always people getting registered and all these types of things. And I talk to these people, and they're very, extremely passionate. They're not very knowledgeable on the things. For example, in the state of Ohio, they're passing a bill called Issue 1, which intends to get rid of gerrymandering. But as soon as I asked questions, in terms of, why will this bill, what districts is this bill changing? How are you going to actually get rid of gerrymandering? It's like saying we're going to pass a bill that gets rid of corruption. There's a lot more meat and potatoes. You can't. I only wish we could wave our magic wands and say no corruption, no scandals, no racism. If only the law worked like that. So I asked these people. I was like, okay, what does this bill do? How does it work? How can we ensure that it's not going to have gerrymandering? And they gave me a few rudimentary facts, but once I asked, like I even asked, is this going to affect only congressional districts? Is this going to be state districts only? They kind of drew a blank. And you know, that's the divisiveness of, I think, current politics. We always want the shortened version of everything, you know, and that's kind of the divide now that I see from Republicans and Democrats. Like a Republican's going to sit here and tell me that they're very logical, they're smart thinkers. They'll attack Kamala on her things, but they'll say she's a communist. We're going to increase so much debt. She has no qualifications. They think in a very logical, so to speak, way. But on the flip side, you have these super. Um, on the flip side, the people who are super liberal for Kamala, they attack a lot of things about Trump, saying, he skipped the draft. He has no rhetoric, no decorum. He's, incited insurrection. Just ruins the fundamental principles of democracy, which you can interpret as logic for sure, but I see it's a lot more heart. I see it as a lot more passion. Um, so the question why this loops back is, maybe I'll touch more philosophically. I think, as men, we're supposed to think with our brains, apparently. We're supposed to be very logical, this and that. While fundamentally, and, I'm not saying this is the case for every woman, but, think with the passion, think with the heart is a lot more um, a liberal sort of thing. So I think that's why you see that divide where most men lean conservative and most women lean liberal. But the funny thing is, you can get to the same conclusion, I think, from both logic and passion. And I think that's something that was on full display during the VP debate. You saw so many times J.D. Vance and Tim Walz just agreeing on a lot of fundamental things. And, which is good, which I think is great. I talk a lot about depressing things on this channel, um, but it's one of those questions where it's like, okay, I want to choose to shed tears because I care about people. people are not just statistics. But then you could say, well, I want to choose think with my head. Maybe we're losing X amount of people, but think about X amount of people we're saving, right? So you have to, think about it in the sense where we can use both schools of thought. There's just not just one way or the other. And I think, people are so caught up in the idea that, you can't use either or. Um, but, that's up for you to decide, I think, how much of your head, quote unquote, you want to use and how much of your heart you want to use. Um, for me personally, I would say as a man growing up in that manly culture, you are taught to use your head. So I've always approached it that way. But I find myself coming to the same conclusions as the heart. So maybe instead of saying, sweat, sweat from your head and don't cry, or, use your tears, express your emotions, don't listen to your crazy head that's telling you crazy things. I think we can use our heart and our head unanimously. I think we can use them simultaneously. It's a work. I'm not saying a even 50-50 split, but I'm saying work using your head and your heart 100% harmoniously. You know, Logic is always okay. Passion is always okay. Um, and you may find yourself ending up in the same place as the person to the right or to the left of you. But yeah, different schools of thought. But I'll let you decide which one's better and how. And I'm curious as to know how you guys approach, thinking about things politically. Are you more of a do you shed more tears or do you shed more sweat? Um, Let me know. I'm very curious. There's no wrong or right answers. I'm the only wrong one here. Anyways, thank you. Hope you enjoy your day, and I'll see you tomorrow.